My name is Claire Weston, and the day my life changed wasn't when I lost everything. It was when I realized I didn't need what they took. It started in a mahogany-paneled room filled with tension and perfume. My parents sat side by side at the head of the table, my older sister Julia to their right, polished, confident, and glowing with the kind of privilege she wore like skin. I sat opposite, hands clasped, heart steady but burning quietly inside. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and began reading my father's will. "To our beloved daughter Julia Weston," he said, "we leave $10 million, the Weston family estate, and full ownership of Weston Manufacturing shares." The words floated in the air like ash from a fire. Then came the part that was supposed to be mine. "To our daughter Claire," the lawyer continued, "we leave our love and the belief that she will make her own way, as she always has." Silence. Heavy. Cold. I didn't move. My mother glanced at me, not in pity, not in apology, but in satisfaction. My father cleared his throat and added softly, "You're strong, Claire. You don't need our money." I smiled, because crying would have given them power. "Thank you," I said, standing slowly. "You're right. I don't." Julia looked uncomfortable. She always hated it when I didn't react the way she expected. As I walked out of that room, I didn't take the elevator. I took the stairs. Every step a reminder that the only direction left was up. That night, I sat in my one-bedroom apartment, staring at the same ceiling I'd painted myself 2 years earlier. I had $1,840 in my bank account, a small job as a data analyst, and an inbox full of rejection letters from companies that said I lacked leadership experience. I could almost hear my mother's voice in my head. "See, Claire? That's why Julia runs the company and you don't. They'd always underestimated me." I wasn't angry, not yet, just quiet. Quiet is where my ideas are born. 3 weeks later, I received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single handwritten note on parchment. "If you're reading this, Claire, it means the truth is buried, and you're the only one who can unearth it. Look beneath what they gave Julia." It was signed, Uncle Robert. My uncle had passed away 2 months before the will reading. He'd been my father's older brother, a black sheep of the family who'd vanished after a fight over company shares 15 years earlier. No one ever talked about him. My father called him a dreamer who didn't understand business. But Uncle Robert had always understood me. When I was a teenager, he'd once told me, "If they shut you out, Claire, it's because they're afraid of what you'll build without them." That letter was the first spark. I took 2 weeks off work under the excuse of family matters. I spent those days driving back to the old Weston estate, where Julia was already moving in. When I arrived, she was outside with movers, barking orders, wearing designer sunglasses like a crown. "Claire," she called, feigning surprise. "Didn't expect to see you here. Looking for closure?" "Something like that," I replied, forcing a smile. Inside the house, everything smelled of polish and dust. But the study, my uncle's old office, hadn't changed. Books lined the walls, and behind the shelves, I noticed something odd, a faint line in the wood paneling, almost like a seam. I pressed on it. A small compartment popped open. Inside was a USB drive. That night, in my car, I plugged it into my laptop. Dozens of encrypted files filled the screen. One folder stood out. Atlas Holdings, Weston Investments. My heart pounded. I decrypted one of the files using a basic password. Weston 1978. It worked. The screen revealed internal company documents showing years of misallocated funds, money, funneled through offshore accounts in Julia's name, authorized by my father. They'd been laundering profits for years, hiding behind charitable foundations and false board structures. I sat there, shaking, not from fear, but from something far sharper. Purpose. They hadn't just disinherited me. They'd tried to erase me from a story that was never theirs to begin with. I copied the entire drive and encrypted it under my own key. Then I drove away, not to the city, not home, but to the small coastal town where Uncle Robert had last lived. If he'd sent that letter, there had to be more. I found his cottage easily, weathered, quiet, and locked. But under the porch mat was a single silver key, and next to it, a note written in his handwriting. The truth lives here. But so does danger. And as I turned the key in the lock, I knew the will wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The cottage smelled like dust and time. It was small, cluttered, and full of the kind of silence that made you feel watched. Sunlight filtered through tattered curtains, catching particles in the air like gold dust. I stood in the middle of the room, clutching that silver key as if it had unlocked not just a door, but a past I was never meant to see. Uncle Robert's cottage was a museum of half-finished inventions and hidden regrets. On the walls hung photos of my family, my father, young and ambitious, my mother, elegant but cold, and me, maybe 6 years old, sitting on Robert's shoulders laughing. There were no photos of Julia. I moved to his desk, where everything was neatly arranged, except for one strange object, a sealed envelope labeled "For Claire Only." My throat tightened. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, written in Robert's slanted handwriting. "Claire, if you're reading this, your father and sister have already taken what was never meant to be theirs. Weston Manufacturing wasn't built on innovation. It was built on stolen patents, mine. I trusted your father, and he betrayed me. I walked away with nothing, but I built something else in secret, and now it's yours. You'll find everything in the safe behind the painting of the sea." I turned to the wall and saw it, a painting of a stormy ocean. Behind it, sure enough, was a small digital safe. It required a code. I smiled. Uncle Robert never made things easy. On the desk was an old clock, stopped at 11:23, the exact time my mother told me Robert died. My fingers trembled as I entered 1123 into the safe. It clicked open. Inside were two things, a stack of legal documents and a hard drive labeled Aurea. I took the drive and plugged it into my laptop. What loaded wasn't just data. It was a blueprint, an entire system design, far beyond anything Weston Manufacturing had ever developed. It was Aurea, an autonomous AI-driven energy optimization platform, a clean tech revolution that could have made billions. At the bottom of the first file, Robert had written a single line. "This is my legacy, but it belongs to you, Claire, not them." For the first time since the will reading, I felt something other than anger. I felt destiny. That night, I stayed at the cottage and started digging deeper into Robert's files. Each folder revealed more evidence. Patents filed under temporary aliases, schematics copied later into Weston Manufacturing systems, signed by my father. He hadn't just betrayed his brother. He'd stolen his future. And now, the company my family had built their empire on was about to be destroyed. By the truth. By morning, I had a plan. I took all the files, organized them, and uploaded encrypted backups to a secure cloud server under my name. Then I called the only person I trusted, Lisa, a former coworker and data security expert. When she answered, I didn't waste time. "Lisa, I found something. Something big." There was silence. Then, "How big?" "Big enough to bury an entire family fortune." 2 days later, we met in a quiet cafe in downtown Seattle. I showed her the documents, the files, the digital signatures linking my father and Julia to the fraud. She leaned back, whistling softly. "Claire, this is corporate theft on a national scale. If you leak this, Weston Manufacturing will crumble." "That's the idea," I said. "But you'll take them down too," she warned. "Your last name's on those papers. You'll be caught in the crossfire," I smiled. "Then I'll build something new from the ashes." Over the next few weeks, Lisa helped me set up a digital trail, anonymous drop points, offshore file backups, and a timeline for release. We weren't just going to leak the data. We were going to expose the truth at the company's next investor meeting. The timing couldn't have been more poetic. The meeting was being held in honor of Julia's new position as CEO of Weston Manufacturing. My father had officially retired, passing the torch. The theme of the event? Legacy. The night before the meeting, I returned to the estate one last time. Julia was there, hosting a private dinner for investors. When she saw me, Her face twisted in a mix of irritation and curiosity. "Claire," she said coolly, "still chasing ghosts?" I looked her straight in the eye. "No, just collecting debts." Her lips curled into a smirk. "You're still bitter about the will, aren't you? You could have built a life if you'd just let it go." "I am building one," I replied softly. "You'll see tomorrow." The next morning, I walked into the conference hall dressed in black, with a calmness that felt almost divine. Investors, board members, and media filled the room. Cameras flashed as Julia took the stage, smiling radiantly. "Today," she said, "we celebrate a new chapter in the Weston legacy. Innovation, integrity, and family." I waited until her final word, family, echoed off the walls. Then, from the back of the room, I stood up and said, "Funny you should mention integrity, Julia. Let's talk about that." Heads turned. Julia froze. Within seconds, every screen in the room lit up. Not with her presentation, but with the files I'd uploaded overnight. Patent records. Transaction logs. Signed authorizations. Proof of theft. And finally, the blueprint for Aurea, labeled Property of Robert Weston. The crowd went silent. Reporters started whispering. My father, sitting in the front row, went pale. Julia's voice trembled. "Claire, what did you do?" I met her eyes, my voice steady. I told the truth. Security rushed toward the stage, but it was too late. The data had already been sent to every major outlet, every investor, every legal department tied to the Weston name. By the time I walked out of that building, the empire my parents had built was already falling. The news hit faster than anyone expected. By the next morning, every major outlet carried the story. Weston Manufacturing under federal investigation. CEO, Julia Weston accused of patent fraud. Family, fortune built on stolen technology. The empire my parents had built on lies was burning. And I was the one who lit the match. The fallout my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists, lawyers, old friends pretending to care. I didn't answer any of them. I sat in my apartment, staring out at the gray Seattle skyline, coffee cold on the table, laptop open to a single news headline. Whistleblower exposes Weston family cover-up. They didn't know it was me. Not yet, but Julia did. That evening I got a message. One line, no greeting. "You think this makes you the hero?" I didn't reply, because this wasn't about being a hero. It was about being free. 3 days later, Julia showed up at my door. No makeup, hair unkempt, eyes swollen like she hadn't slept. I didn't let her in at first. She just stood there shaking. "Claire," she whispered. "They froze the accounts. The house, the cars, all seized. Dad's in hiding. Mom's in Florida. The lawyers, they say there's no way out." I stayed silent. She laughed bitterly. "You got what you wanted, didn't you? You destroyed us." I met her eyes. "No, Julia, you destroyed yourselves. I just stopped pretending it didn't happen." She started to cry. The kind of silent, exhausted crying that comes from realizing the world doesn't owe you mercy. Then she said something I never expected. "I didn't know what Dad did. Not really. I thought the patents were his." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But lies had a way of wearing familiar faces in our family. The aftermath. 2 months later, federal charges were filed. My father disappeared into business travel that turned into permanent exile. My mother sold what was left of the estate and vanished to Europe. Julia faced trial. The company was dismantled, piece by piece. Assets liquidated, properties repossessed, the Weston name scrubbed from every corporate registry. And me? For the first time in my life, I had nothing, and it felt like everything. I used the settlement money I got from Robert's patents to rebuild his dream. Not the company he'd lost, but the idea he believed in. Innovation with integrity. I called it Aurea Labs, a name born from his secret project, a name that felt like redemption. We started small, just me, Lisa, and 2 graduate engineers from my old research program. We didn't chase investors or fame, we chased purpose. Our first invention was a solar filtration module that could convert polluted air into reusable energy. It was simple, elegant, and it worked. We got our first grant within 6 months. By the end of the first year, Aurea Labs was featured in Forbes as a startup built on truth. The reunion a year later, I was giving a talk at a sustainable tech conference in San Francisco. When I stepped off stage, someone was waiting near the exit. Julia. She looked different, simpler. No designer clothes, no entourage. Just her holding a small box. "I'm not here to fight," she said. She opened the box and handed me a pocket watch, my grandfather's. I found it when they cleared out Dad's office. He kept it in his desk the whole time. I traced the initials on the lid. W.R.W. Walter Robert Whitman, Grandpa. "Why are you giving this to me?" I asked. "Because it was always meant for you," she said softly. Then she smiled. Small, real, human. I joined a nonprofit, teaching kids communication and presentation skills. Thought, maybe I could start over too. For a long time I didn't say anything. Then I nodded. Maybe we both can. The legacy 2 years later, Aurea Labs expanded internationally. Our technologies were used in rural farming villages, ocean cleanup programs, and climate restoration projects across 3 continents. Every lab had the same sign at its entrance. Write the things they don't understand. One day, the world will. Grandpa's words, etched in glass, illuminated by sunlight. Some nights, after everyone left, I'd walk through the lab in silence. The hum of machines, the soft flicker of light through solar panels, all of it alive, breathing, built on truth. And I'd think about that will reading, how they told me to go earn my own, and how I did. But what they never understood was, I didn't earn it for revenge. I earned it because my worth was never theirs to give or take. The epilogue one evening, Grandma called from Charleston. Her voice was weaker now, but still warm. "You made him proud, Claire," she said. "Your grandfather, he'd have loved what you built." I smiled, staring out over the glowing skyline. I just followed his map. "Keep following it," she whispered. "And don't forget to live while you do." When the call ended, I stood by the window for a long time, watching the city lights shimmer like stars. Somewhere out there, maybe in another house, another life, Julia was finding her way too, and that was enough. Because in the end, the fortune they denied me became the freedom I built myself. The legacy they tried to bury became the truth that set me free. And the girl they told to go earn her own finally did. Not in dollars, but in peace.